Hi Scott, how are you? Hello?
Sorry about that. You staying warm and dry?
Just about, yeah, it has been quite wet here, but it's very mild for the time of year.
Yeah, so back in Seattle, they're having an atmospheric river causing all kinds of flooding. And 100,000 people were kicked out of their houses. So fortunately, my house is on top of a mountain, so everything goes everything moves south or down the hill. So but yeah. But I'm not experiencing it down here.
Yeah, that's dreadful for those people who are affected though, at this time of
Yeah,
year. Hi
yes.
Carol.
Hello there.
Hi.
Hello, hello. Thank you for joining.
Of course.
Hello. Uh, okay. So
So I think
let-
today you were gonna go over the John Phillips information.
yeah, so let me share screens with the notes.
And Drummond left me a note saying that he had a late night meeting and this was the only meeting he had in the morning, so he was gonna
He's going
put
to have
some.
a snooze.
Yeah, he's gonna sleep in, which is he needs his sleep. He does.
Sometimes he does.
So I guess it's not the right time to have John join us. It would be later in the afternoon, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's the middle of the night for him.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well, let's start with an introduction from you, Carol. That would be brilliant.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, I'm Carol Dunn. I'm working with Drummond on the first person cooperative. I have a background in product management and excited to join this cooperative journey that we're on.
All right. Yeah, so we are feeding into his project, but this work is separate. This is more
Yes.
of the standards work. And we, just to give you up to speed, so we were starting to use the methodology and toolkit that I created for Trust over IP for a risk assessment. And we moved to at least a level where we were identifying the scope. And then Sankashan, who's not here, had offered kind of his deep dive on risk assessments because we're ready to start populating risks, um, and and also focus a little bit more on the harms because we haven't really talked about that. So we can move forward, with the harms. I'm asking, the other task forces to, they're moving forward with specifications, but my question is specifications against what risks? So maybe I'm gonna give them some chance to kind of figure that out, and then we'd have come back with a session, and that would allow us to get more input because I don't think the task forces even know what specifications or risks are yet. So
Mhm.
I need to give them a chance to do that. Um, I thought we could do leadership and drive that process, but that's not how it's happening. So in the meantime, um, Nikki is going to drive other things to move us along, including this presentation that she got from John Phillips in Australia.
Hmm. So before we go ahead, have you joined a Trust over IP meeting before, Carol, or a diff meeting?
I have not. Drummond and Margie encouraged me to come to this because I keep talking about risks.
Brilliant. Well,
Are you a member of Trust Over IP, by the way?
I am not, no.
So you need to be in order to participate in these meetings. You can hang with us
Okay.
because, I would have known. So I'm the signatory for the trust over. I'm a steering committee member.
Hmm.
So I would have known. So it's fairly simple. I'll go find the link and I'll put it in the chat
Okay. Thank
to
you.
join as an individual contributor.
Yeah, it's just for antitrust reasons and keep it legal. It's nothing personal, I can assure you.
Totally fine.
So yeah, there's some work to do, and I think Sankashan said he was going to do it on translating his spreadsheet over into uh, this one. So this one here, there you go. And then
Yeah,
that is, I think, a copy of, yeah, this is a copy of Sankashan's document that I put in here. Okay. So Carol Sankarshan, who's based in India, so it is pretty late for him, carried out his own risk assessment based on this kind of ecosystem model, which defines kind of the scope of what we're doing. At least a starting point for that. Rather, it's not obviously a component level diagram, but others are building those on top of this. So, and he looked at governance risks, identity risks, schemas, network managers, credentials, cryptography, AI agents, external. I mean, so it's quite comprehensive. Now, he used AI to generate some of this. And so the proposal is that we'll go back using the tool that Scott developed for the community, which is this risk assessment worksheet. Um, and what we've done is this area is all of these categories are tied in with that logical visual model that you saw, or they come direct from and they come direct from the template and tools that Scott developed. So there's some that are well populated and others that will be taking, let's take an example risk here. So this is a human experience risk,
Mm.
we're
low
not seeing.
digital,
Oh, we are seeing it. Okay,
low
thought the chair
digital
moved.
literacy, um, and at this stage in the process, Scott just says we need to document the risks. We don't need to worry too much about likelihood and impact, or the controls that we put in place. We just need to document what are we dealing with because obviously the likelihood and impact depends on your risk appetite and you know
No,
whether
it
or not
doesn't
that.
really. Actually, it doesn't because that's more of a um, because the risk appetite is really that comes out to the assessment, I guess. But still, the appetite, in my view, is when you do the triage and you determine. So if you put all your risks in, you categorize them against likelihood and harm, and impact, then you'll come out. If you can go to the down the legend and maybe no, the last tab, that's going to be the best. Risk assessment that says risk assessment. No, next one. So that should be, yeah, if you can get that a little smaller. Yeah. So after you've kind of done your you've risk scored all of the risk aside from from your appetite. Then you do a triage, and that's the cutoff of what risks you want to move forward with depends on your appetite.
Mhm.
So if your appetite is more on the risk side, you would do your cutoff towards the medium high or high. If your risk tolerance is low, then you'll probably even include low and medium risks. That's where I see. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's where as
Yeah,
a
and you're not
consultant,
wrong, Scott. I misremembered what you told us. You're the expert in this domain,
I
so
don't, please. I hate when you do that. So, but and that's a generic conversation with us around what tolerance are we going to have? More, if we're including more risk, that's more work for our working group and task force because
mm,
then we have to then we have to carry all of those risks into and identifying specifications,
mm.
government specifications to address. If we're just cutting off, just the higher risks, then that's less work for us. I mean, it's just the way it is. But, and so the question comes, and the challenge will be is since we're coming up with a suggested model, the consumers of our work as a standards development organization, they're going to come in with varying um, risk tolerances, right? So, my request will probably be some kind of medium level. And if people want, if people have more of a risk, more of a risk tolerance or less of a risk, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out where it goes. But if they want to include more risk, they can just do it. But they're going to have to do their own work on it. I think our cutoff is going to be kind of right in the middle of potential users and maybe skewed towards, since we know the first person project will look at it, we'll probably kind of get that feedback around what their tolerance is and then kind of use it there. All right. I'm sorry to move you, but that's where I was thinking around doing,
Yeah, I thought a couple of in what was interesting for me in this approach was the this kind of cause and consequences. And I think when you understand the cause, that helps you with your controls.
yeah. No, I think it
Um,
helps to categorize a little. It leads you down the path around likelihood and impact, especially impact.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, if you have a cause and then that causes a consequence, what is the global ramification, or at least to the scope of what the issue is, or the
Mm,
ecosystem's impact? I think that's really as far as we can go, right? Whatever's in scope. So if we have a consequence of fraud risk, how can how will that affect the ecosystem that we're developing, which is really around the yellow box. That's the largest. I don't know, did we show the picture that speaks 1,000 words? Not that one, but the one that the scope document. Because I think Carol would like to see, that would be something that I think Carol should see. But that's probably in another spreadsheet or another Google file. Yeah, there it is. So we developed the scope. And so the question is, from a risk and consequence and all that, how will it affect the users of, at the end of the day, since we're not going to go to the DTG ecosystem, that's going to be out of scope, but how would it affect the DTG communities, like an FPP. That would be a community that would be using all of these things. The purple box is some of the stuff that we're going to be focusing on within the working group to serve some of these things. And the blue and the green boxes are areas that will define some guidance or maybe specifications that the first person project can use.
Got
Okay.
it. That's super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, so that's
And
kind of
it's all a work in progress, Carol. Martina, for example, has used it to develop component models,
Mhm.
and we're still not 100% sure about what's in these boxes, but Scott and I needed to get something on a page so that we could understand what our scope was within this group and get started. I think not all of us fully appreciated how early days it was. And I think it's the typical thing of when you start a new product, everyone's got something slightly different in mind. So,
Mhm.
and
well, it's
using
something it's hard
similar
to describe.
terms or the different terms for the same thing. And there's a bit of push me, pull me going on. But if you're interested in harms and risks, then you're in the right place because we're the worry words of the community, Scott or this group
Yeah.
is.
Perfect.
No, but it was hard. I mean, the other thing is, I think it was just hard to describe. We didn't know what was in the bread box, and people come from different places. I said, well, let's come up with a picture that we can all agree on, so we know what we're actually going to do. And I think Drummond found this very helpful because, he had to spin up an 86-page document to explain it. And here we're doing it in one page. So there you go. So, but it was helpful, and now he can use this as well to describe it. Because some people have that kind of view. They need to have a picture. So, and it also helps our harms discussion because we can then go, okay, where are the harms pockets existing? And we can then go into this picture and start traversing the different sub boxes to see where the harms potential issues are.
Got it. Thank you. This is very, very helpful.
Let me quickly get you the Miro board link. I think if you look in these meetings, let me open in a new tab. So, for example, this is last week's meeting and I couldn't attend it. There's one diagram there. Martina obviously hasn't put her diagram in. Um, so I was sure I'd put it in. There we go. That's been done. It's advanced since then. And there you can see the Miro source link.
Mhm.
And that's a board that I've set up for decent. I subscribe to Miro. I use it quite a lot. And I've set up this board for this group so that anyone can make use of it. And so you should be able to get guest access to this, and you can start playing around with it yourself. And this is just on the left-hand side, an example from a previous project about that was the kind of starting point. That was used to create a governance framework, whereas we're using this for just like organizing our brains.
Mhm.
And then Martina, I don't know if this is the latest version. And as I say, I couldn't join the meeting last week, but she's done a proper component diagram and flow.
Yeah, I couldn't
Uh,
make the meeting either, so I
yeah, so she's done some fantastic work on this, which is
And
really starting to tease things out and identify gaps and all that kind of thing. So, hi,
yeah.
Kevin.
Hey, thanks for being
We
patient.
we
Yeah, go ahead.
were you able to make the working group meeting last week to see?
No, I was out of the country. I'm just returning now.
Oh, welcome
Yeah,
back.
thank you.
So, I think there'll be updates about this and other things in the working group meeting tomorrow, I expect.
Nikki, how do I get access to the Confluence page, to that Confluence?
To Confluence,
Mhm.
let me put the link in the chat. So that's the wiki for this, for the working group meeting.
Perfect. Thank you.
And then you can find us at the bottom here. So should we take some time on this work from John?
Yeah, I'd like to better understand it. I mean, you know, he had a well thought, there was some depth in his review. And let's take a critical look to see what we can take out of that.
Hey, sorry, my brain is full of something very different, so it's quite a heavy lift for me to multitask on this. So yeah, John Phillips is a member of the community. He's based in Melbourne in Australia. So he joins the APAC calls, and he's John's really good at that kind of so what question. What does this mean for real people in the real world and practical things? And quite early on in this, oh, so I suppose it was about a month ago, 6 months ago, maybe. I lose track of time. Anyhow, some months ago, on the first person email chain, uh, the question of harms came up, and John had said, "What about if Alice and Bob have got a relationship credential, and Alice decides she wants to end the relationship? How does that kind of measure up against the right to be forgotten? Do you see? So, if Bob refuses to get rid of the credential, should he get rid of the credential because they did have a relationship, and what harms could arise in the real world based on that kind of scenario? And he went through two exercises with Gemini as his poison of choice. And he started by creating the scenarios and asking them the questions. And it came back with one analysis, but then he spotted that he hadn't the AI hadn't actually read the first person project paper. So he fed that in and asked it the same thing again. And as is so often the case, when you ask for the second time, the answer's not nearly as satisfying. So he made a comment on these notes to say that we should go and look at that original paper, and he's linked it here. Uh, so Got that many copy clean link. There we go. That's the daddy. So confusingly, both papers look very similar. So I haven't been through this original document, but I did review in detail a couple of times the second one. And essentially, the conclusion was, as expected, that there are a number of different harms that can rise out of this use of decentralized trust graph technologies. They are kind of, it particularly exacerbates certain social harms. Like the use case that it uses is a couple in an abusive relationship, where the Alice is the victim of coercive control by Bob. So using all the classic kind of tactics. And in terms of the legal question around the right to be forgotten, it said that that did not apply. GDPR was all about platforms and consumers, and that it didn't apply to peer-to-peer relationships on a legal footing. Now, of course, it's an AI conclusion and it probably needs to be run by a lawyer, but that kind of makes sense in terms of, well, if that's not the law that applies, what is the law that applies? Um, and, obviously things like revocation mechanisms become important. That Alice can revoke the relationship credential and say, no, it's an important part of human agency, obviously, to be able to say, no, I don't want to be related to you anymore. I want to leave this employer or leave the club or leave the marriage or whatever it might be. So that's the essence. I mean, it's quite flabby. I mean, John wasn't claiming any great amount of time. He was just like, I wonder what that means for GDPR. So my aim was to take that insight and then just put it into the spreadsheet under human harms. Any thoughts, questions?
So we does he add some harms, or how are we going to use this document for our purposes?
Uh, so this is the document. I guess I need to go back through the other one. I'm sorry, I've been really up against it with client work this week, so I've not progressed this. Um,
I'm thinking maybe what we could do a little bit of AI-ish things. Can ask AI to pull out, certain harms out of the document. And
so as you can see in the comments, I'd highlighted in yellow. I forgot I'd done this. What I thought, because I prepared it for last week. But so, what really is the risk, And I think it reveals architectural bias. The system prioritizes the integrity of historical attestations and individual control over one's own data above one party's ability to compel erasure from another's private records. So the risk is that I guess there's impersonation risks, but it's really for me, my company name is Digital Egret and we're all about balance. And it's, that you've got rights, but you've also got duties or obligations, and that should be managed in governance. Rather like when you sign a contract as a business and you agree that when you end the contract, you'll delete all of the property and hand back confidential information, something like that, which obviously we could enforce in the technology. Uh, then it identified that there was value in having this attestation over a period of time. So, this cryptographic proof that Alice once attested to this relationship could be crucial in disputes over shared history, co-created assets, or encountering abusive behaviors like gaslighting, where an abuser denies past events. So, as with all powerful technologies, basically, you can use it for good or ill, you know. Uh, so I think that's a flip side benefit. Um, then there's John just commenting on some of the use of language by Gemini. Um, so this is the whole point about GDPR. Uh, and you know we need a legal mind on it, and it may be different in different jurisdictions, but and it might apply differently to different technological implementations. Like,
Well, I guess I had my question is where is it coming out where the GDPR doesn't apply? Is it
well, because you've got Article 17 says you've got this right to be forgotten
by whom? Is it the target of who
by the data
should forget you?
controller, the data
Huh?
controller.
Right, right. And that, I mean, does that not, when it goes down to a personal level, is that a problem?
When it goes down to a personal level, it's unenforceable, is what it seems to be saying. And it's not the law is not designed for personal level. And of
Okay,
course, you can't forget, can you? It's a fact that you were married, for example.
right,
But it's also a fact that you're now divorced, you know, so there's no reason why you couldn't have a relationship credential that's issued based on a certificate that says you're now divorced. You know, divorce is still a relationship. It might not be a particularly healthy or constructive relationship, but it's still a relationship, isn't it?
right. No, I get that. Okay.
A quick question on this scenario. So sorry, was the initial setup that they were actually sharing an ID or that they were just
They'd
connected?
created a VCR, a VRC, a
Okay.
verifiable relationship credential
Okay,
between,
got it.
yeah. Uh, uh, and because Bob is not processing data about Alice in the sense of a data controller, he's holding a direct attestation from Alice. Consequently, the legal mechanisms of GDPR cannot be invoked by Alice to compel Bob to delete the VRC she gave him.
Hmm.
And then it does it quite a nice little comparison. And then this is potentially in governance, a requirement that we might use relational data rights. I thought that was quite interesting.
Yeah, that's where I was going to mentally. If GDPR is really applying to platforms who have traditionally controlled the data, right? And it's a whole new system of data control, it actually needs a new legal framework.
Potentially, although I still think the mechanism of revocation, as long as I can, if I'm Alice, I can revoke that VRC.
Mm-hmm.
even without Bob consenting to it, then anytime Bob tries to use that VRC, for example, he's applying for a loan and he wants to prove that he is married, then that is not going to be verifiable, is it? If I have understood the tech correctly.
Yeah,
Just
that
as
makes
if the
sense.
passport office revoke a credential, I can't verify it.
Hmm.
How it appears in the trust graph is a matter of computation, in my view. How it depends how you're computing reputation.
Yeah, well, someone has to vouch for that. And and evidence needs to be presented to the voucher in order for a voucher to give evidence or an attestation of your marriage, right? And then the person can use that in proving that they were married or divorced or whatever event that's needed for the VRC, right? So I don't, I just think that it's part of the ecosystem, but it's not part of the verifiable relationship credential. Maybe, or maybe in all right, so let's come up with a crazy idea. So let's say you're in an ecosystem and a community that requires you to be married. Okay. Right. And in order to join and get a community credential, you have to prove you're married. And so you do that. Why would that be out of scope? That's a possibility, whether it's married or some other condition that requires evidence
That's
in
just
order.
a kind of witness scheme or notary scheme, though, isn't it? It doesn't, otherwise, it undermines the whole premise that even before we're married, or Alice and Bob are married, when they're going out or cohabiting or going on holiday together, or they
Right.
decide that, uh, they can attest to the relationship without any central authority. Of course, they could increase perhaps the utility and the value of that relationship by getting a third party like a marriage bureau or a vicar or whoever does the marrying in your particular
Well, you
jurisdiction,
you you said something that I wanted to stop on because and I always get involved in the difference between assert and attest. Now, Bob can assert he's married, okay, but your marriage partner can attest to that. So I agree that the two of them can attest to each other, but the only way that Bob can get confirmation that he's married solely without the married partner saying, "Yep, I'm married to him." Or maybe you can get a friend that says, "Oh, I know they're married," because that's how this trust graph seems to be working, right? They look at other endorsers of claimed facts.
yeah,
So,
and that's
I
why
get
it's the
that. That's
computation.
that's a little out of my, I'm
Yeah,
just trying to
that's
figure
why
that
it's
out.
the computation on reputation, the weight you give to each of those edges in computing the quality of that relationship. And relationships change over time, right? So
Right.
uh the but there are certain controls on relationships, like dispute resolution, like the ability to end a relationship unilaterally.
Right.
I mean, I once tried to break up with a boyfriend and he said you can't do that unilaterally. I said, you bet you dollar, buddy, I can, So for some people,
That's funny.
But he literally couldn't see how I could unilaterally end it.
Well, you were causing him harm. That was he was jumping right into that.
Yeah, so this section actually talks about some nice features of using this alternative mapping of mutual relationships. And at every wedding ceremony, you have to have witnesses. So they can issue credentials and attest or assertions. I was the witness at this wedding. Yes, you were the witness at my wedding. So you can see how it kind of builds up and how it becomes really important if you think about a child born in a refugee camp, where the jurisdiction is not willing to say, yes, they're a Syrian child. And wherever they're camping out in Turkey or Jordan, they're not willing to say they're a give them a birth certificate. But there was a midwife and a mother and a father and friends and family who can assert that they were in the room when the child was born and it was indeed the child of this particular woman, and things like that. So you can see how many smaller relationships and assertions or attestations can build up a nice, strong picture, which is actually much more difficult to defraud than a central authority where a brown paper bag of money handed over the counter will see you with a Syrian birth certificate. So
Now,
I thought that was kind of interesting.
is there things that we could pull out and go and move to the spreadsheet, which is
I think so, in terms of the notes. Uh, like I highlighted the risk above, but also some things to think about in terms of mitigations or governance requirements.
yeah. Well, it should feed into that.
Yeah,
If it's a risk, then okay, is this something that we could, within our project, mitigate to some degree?
yeah, absolutely. And other like benefits that we can bolster. So, for example, obtaining an FPC, a new FPC from a different ecosystem if necessary, so that a victim can build a new digital life that is not cryptographically correlated with their old one, making it significantly harder for an abuser to follow them. And this could also be an interesting, like, resilience or countermeasure. So that kind of fights against co-opting of identity systems, like if there's a change of government and they're not benevolent, you know, like what happened in Afghanistan when the Taliban took over the identity system and used it to identify targets for killings and things.
Right. So the first person project is they're putting in a limitation that within that ecosystem you can only get one FPC. So if you get, so I was just thinking of what that just said. He says you can get an FPC from another ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you don't like, what the first person project says about you, you're a bot and oh, we didn't like you. You're a bot. Well, the bot can go to another ecosystem and try to qualify.
Yeah.
And so maybe the
Or
harm,
you're fleeing, you're a Syrian refugee in a camp in Jordan, and you can create your own Syrian, like what happens naturally in the real world with diaspora. Um, so it's a way of creating safety, but like through relationships, so you're not dependent in quite the same way. Uh, Then I was obviously I had our harms paper in my mind, and so these are specific harms that can go in the spreadsheet in terms of coercive issuance and revocation, cryptographic gaslighting, which is very colourful language. I tried to understand what that said. So because the trust graph allows a holder to retain proof of a past relationship that could be subverted. An abuser could deny a relationship ever existed, revoke their VRC, and then socially pressure or threaten the victim into deleting their copy of the credential. More insidiously, an abuser could refuse to issue a VRC in the first place, leaving the victim with no verifiable proof of a long-term relationship, which could be socially and legally damaging in disputes over shared
Yeah,
assets, custody, or
uh,
history. So we got to
that's
look at it from both sides, like happy paths for good actors and unhappy paths for bad actors.
yeah, yeah. No, that seems that resonates with me because that's, in court we see that a lot. They're testing relationships in court and people deny, having to know some, and that carries weight. So
Yeah, I think it would only count as circumstantial evidence in court because the level of assurance is quite low, or we think
correct.
it is. Um, but it's and we would need to properly test it with some edge case persona um, and scenarios like this one, but other ones as well, where we think harms could arise.
Yeah, but they say here they could, an abuser could deny a relationship ever existed, revoke their verifiable relationship credential, but you can see if you revoke something, you had to be able to create something in so that in itself carries, it doesn't throw everything out the window. You
Mm,
can't revoke something that didn't exist. So you could then present, well, at some point, I had a credential, right? You
yeah.
can't revoke something that didn't exist, right? So
Mm,
there you go. I'm challenging that. So that's only a half issue because you can prove that at some point we didn't exchange. Right?
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So then the next one is forced correlation and surveillance. The privacy benefits of unlinkable personas can be negated through coercion. An abuser could demand that a victim use only one public persona for all online interactions and require that all VRCs be linked to it. This would transform the victim's trust graph from a tool of privacy into a perfect user-maintained surveillance log for the abuser. So I think a good edge case persona is this victim of coercive control. Another one is a victim of modern slavery. Um, that would be good. And maybe a refugee example also. Because I think there's stuff we can do with the trust graph that would help those people, but equally we've got to be mindful that, like any great tech, it can be used for different ill ill-gotten gains, and like social harms are so difficult to manage, even with governance, because they relate to social norms, not legal norms. But I was just kind of thinking, well, how would you countervail that? And I'm wondering about like adversarial techniques where you could create a different target persona, like a fake persona. Um, uh, and create false trust graphs so that the real one could hide behind. Uh,
Which that scenario also has plenty of abuse potentials, right?
yeah, there's also, I mean, basically, it's peer-to-peer tech.
Yeah.
Where if we tool up what we consider to be good actors, you can be sure as eggs are eggs that there are going to be bad actors who will find a way to pervert that and use it for harm. Uh, yeah, and then there were no surprises on their conclusion. It's the usual story, you know. Don't think I had any. There was nothing new. So there's some recommending and stuff. So I can read the other documents and kind of report back next time if there are any differences and try and move these over to the sheet into the home section. Is that okay, Scott?
Yep. That was, yeah. Then we can go over it um, the next time we meet, which is
In the new
we
year.
should discuss that. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, I personally could be available on, well, let's just wait until the first week of January, first full week of January. I'm taking the starting Thursday. I'm going to take 2 weeks off. The 2 days and then 2 weeks. Hopefully everybody else will take some downtime. And are you doing anything, Nikki, during the holidays?
Just family stuff, usual.
There you go.
Too much food, bad telly, Christmas jumpers.
There you go. Well, that's good. Hope you enjoy your time, everybody. And
Yeah, have a good one. So, Scott, will you contact the Linux Foundation person to cancel
yep,
the two meetings between now and the first week of January?
right. Right. There was a, okay. I'll, what do you call it? Told me that. Carly told me the person to go to. I think it's support at the LFDT. They're driving us. Okay.
And Nikki, before we go, do you mind? Kevin asked for a link to the document, and then can you link to the spreadsheet just in the comments so we have them at our fingertips?
Yeah.
Well, we've got the link in our meeting notes, but can we put it in the Google Drive as well, or for our task force?
Yeah. Good idea. Let me do that now.
Cool.
File,
Oh, and yeah, the spreadsheet. Is that one in the Google
add
Drive?
shortcut to Drive.
And also, if you don't mind, I've reached out to someone that I trust in this space. I think this is very, very important, what we're discussing today. It'd be good to get another pair of eyes, another
Of
perspective.
course, the more the
How would you recommend?
merrier.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. Cool. How would you suggest onboarding if I do grab another person? Do I introduce them to y'all through
Yeah,
Skype
just
or?
ask them to come along to the call
Okay.
and we'll get introduced and get uh
Yeah, because this person is tech, and also they're in the marginalized community, and that's their passion.
cool.
Yeah,
That sounds really excellent. Thank you, Kevin. That
sure.
makes
Sure.
You know, the more expertise we have on something like this, the better.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
right.
Some of y'all might already know them. They were a lower caste, and now they're LX, um, and like Dave Waterbury knows them, and she's are there in this community. So I'd be surprised if that they're not familiar with some of us here.
Great. Sorry, I'm trying to get the all of this done for you guys so that
Okay.
I
Thank
can
you.
send you the link.
Looks like to
So,
me I need access to the Google Sheets. I just sent a request. I finally found the link.
link. Right, I'm going to put this into Zoom now.
Great.
Thank you.
This is a link to the folder. Everything's in there, including shortcuts to both of those documents.
Beautiful. Looks like one of them's in twice.
Yeah, they're different versions of the same document. I need to differentiate those, don't I?
Okay.
So I'll know what they are, and I'll know based on, right, this is the second one. No, this is the first one. Oh, and maybe I can't change the name because I'm not an editor. I'm just a commentator, so this is the first iteration of the documents.
Yeah. So I went ahead and made the request for cancellation of the 23rd and the 30th, and we'll pick it up on the 6th.
Thank
Okay.
you, Scott.
Yeah. Everyone have a nice holiday break.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming. It's more people that having eyes on these things. So we are starting to get, the two of you, and there's other people like Sankashan. So hopefully we'll have a quorum. We people that look at this stuff and then take their own spin on it really is helpful.
And how do I get automatically added to the meeting invitations, or how do I get those on the calendar?
Yeah, so you need to do, there's two ways.
Hmm.
Um, there's a list. There's a, support list that's there. Plus, the best way to do it is become a member of Trust over IP.
Hmm.
They will give you access to the Linux Foundation decentralized trust calendar.
Okay.
And then you go to the calendar, go to the next meeting, which will be on January 6th, and in the calendar you can click on register, and then
Okay.
you'll get recurring meeting notices.
Good. Thank
So
you.
yeah. So we were absorbed by the Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust as far as
Got
trust
it.
over IP. That's our
And
sustaining organization, literally. So, and they provide some, it's been a good marriage. They provide some overhead that we need and support our ongoing activities.
I'm not sure if you can get a subscription URL for just this task force, but the one I put in the chat channel just now, that's one for all the groups. So that may be a little too busy, more than you're asking for.
Okay.
You can get one for Trust over IP that's just the Trust over IP calendar. That's the one
Yeah.
I subscribe to. Is
Yeah.
that the link you've given us there, Kevin?
Yes. Yeah, that should be just
Perfect.
the right piece. That's all the
Yeah.
working groups.
So I think to subscribe so that you're invited just to one meeting, you um you can do so via groups, but we haven't got a groups.io for this task force. You'd have to sign up to the decentralized trust working group. Um, I don't use that. I just subscribe to the calendar and then pick and choose what I'm gonna join, depending on my interests or time or whatever.
Got it. Thank you. Super helpful.
Have you got all the links that you need?
I think so.
Great. Well, you can always just ping Scott or me.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Really appreciate it.
Rightio. Take care, guys.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
All
Bye.
right. Thanks.
Bye
Bye.
bye. Bye bye.